Welcome to the Creative Community. I'm your host, David Starkey, and my guest this time is Julie Dillemuth, author, poet, and also another genre we'll talk about later on. But we're going to focus first on your work with children's books.
Mm-hmm.
You've done some great work with Laura Wood as your illustrator.
Yes.
And how did you get connected with her?
Well, actually, the publisher is the one who sets up
Right.
illustrators with the picture book authors. And so, yeah, I wish I could do the illustrations, but she is a phenomenal illustrator. And I love her colors and just how she captures the emotions of the characters.
Right.
So I started
Tell me how you got started doing that.
with picture books.
Everybody I've ever met has said, I can write a children's book, right? And hardly anyone does. I didn't realize it's a very cutthroat business, isn't it?
Yes, it's very competitive, and it's difficult, right? Because in a picture book, you have about 500 words to tell a story. That's kind of the sweet spot. You have 32 pages, which comes down to about 27, thinking about title pages, any back matter. And so you really have a constrained kind of situation to bring a story to life. And you have to leave room for the illustrations too, right? Because the text tells the main story, but the illustrations also need to tell part of the story too. And so I got into it because my background's in geography. I have a PhD in geography from UCSB. And one of the things I learned in grad school is that spatial thinking skills are really important for everyday problem solving, as well as like for in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math. And just in some of my coursework, looking at like child development and how we learn these skills, or how we have these skills as adults, whether we're navigating somewhere with a map, trying to get around, trying to assemble furniture,
Right.
trying to fit a couch through the door if you're moving, right? Like all these different things that involve spatial relationships or mental rotation, where you're like manipulating objects in your head that are spatially related. Like all of that, like there's a whole range of skills, and some people are really good at those or various aspects of those, and some people are not. I'm terrible at sense of direction.
Ironically, okay.
Well, that's what made me want to study
Right.
this in geography, is like, why can I not read a map? Why do I get so turned around? Like, what's going on in my mind, or is it with the map? And so that kind of sparked my research interests in geography. And then after grad school, it was about 6 months after I finished that I was thinking, kids' books are a great way to help kids learn different things and help parents engage with kids on different topics. And I came up with an idea for a story. It was a day in the life of a baby with lots of positional language, like up, down, in between, and it was rhyming, and it was just so much fun to write. And about 6 months after that, I was like, you know what, I want to get serious about writing picture books.
Right.
And I started taking classes. I joined
And where did you take the classes? I'm thinking for our audience who is interested in
Yeah,
this.
well, there's a lot of stuff online now. And the professional society, it's the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, SCBWI. And there's a great resource to get started, and anyone can join.
Anyone can join, okay.
Yeah, so it's not like you have to be established. It's like you can be like your first day. So that's what I did. I joined the society. You can get resources, information. There's regional groups. So all over the country, there's a regional group. Our region is SenCal, and it's fantastic. It's really supportive. There's events, there's workshops. And so the more I started learning about it, the more I got more ideas and really enjoyed it. And I'd always kind of wanted to write, and was always very frustrated in my 20s. And
well, you've written a dissertation, so that's
yeah. Well, and then when I finished that, I'm not sick of writing, and this seems to be unusual.
Oh,
so maybe
good.
this is like a a thing.
So how long did it take for you to get from that initial idea, start putting some stuff down on paper, to the first book getting published?
About 5 years.
5 years, okay.
Which is pretty fast.
Is that pretty fast for that?
Yeah, it's some people, it's initially I was like, I'll take a year to like get up and running, publish a book, quit my job, but no, that doesn't happen. So
folks, you have to be really dedicated to this. Yeah.
And tenacious. And I had, I think, 82 rejections before I sold my first picture book.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had about maybe 10 different manuscripts. all different ones in various stages. And some things I sent out too early, they weren't revised enough.
Right.
I was just so excited to try to get my stuff
Right.
out there. So having a critique group where I could get, other writers to give me feedback.
And did you have an agent on your work?
No, and I never have. I tried to get an agent. It's very difficult with picture books because agents work on commission, so they only get paid when you get a contract, and they get a percentage of that. And in picture books, the money's so small because it takes so much to make a book. I mean, you've got full color, you've got hardback, you've got the dust jacket, you've got an illustrator to pay for.
Sure.
So it's,
By the time your royalty check gets to you, you're going to live on it.
Yeah. So it's really difficult to get an agent as a picture book author, and you don't necessarily need to. And Imagination Press is my publisher with these books, and that, at the time anyway, I could submit to them without an agent.
Right.
Yeah, and they were really on board with what I was trying to do with the spatial thinking skills and things like that, so they were very enthusiastic.
Well, they do a gorgeous job with the books too. I think that's really important. And that's what kids are looking at, parents are looking at as they're reading to it. This is ages 4 to 8, am I remember that correctly?
Yeah, and that's the target age. I mean, preschoolers, especially Lucy in the City, which I know we have a picture of that.
Yeah.
Lucy in the City is great for preschoolers, and then, so kids love, I know they start to get into novels and chapter books as they get older, but people love picture books at all ages.
Yeah. Well, and you were talking about the constrictions. It sounded almost like writing a sonnet or something like that, right? I mean, this is very, but there is, and we're going to talk about your poetry in a bit. So can you tell me a little bit about poetry and children's books, and then maybe read a little bit from Camilla, cartographer?
Yeah, sure. And it's interesting because about 5 years ago or so, I decided to get serious about poetry, writing poetry. And I'd always written poetry sort of on and off as I got inspired since high school, but I never felt like I knew what I was doing.
Right.
And I was never very confident. And how do I revise my poems? I have no idea. So I started taking some courses and reading craft books on poetry, and then I realized that, this is like a lot of what I do in picture books, right? Because you want to think about the rhythm of the language, the sounds, right? The sounds that you're speaking in picture books are meant to be read out loud, much as poetry is. And so I was like, I actually know more than I thought I did.
So this was really helpful practice, yeah.
Yeah, and so Camilla Cartographer is the first one with this Camilla character. Now there's 4. The 4th one's coming out next year, but so there's 3 in print, and then the next one. This is about a wild boar who loves maps and has some nice outdoor adventures. And so for this one, I really wanted to make it very lyrical and set the tone of like a winter scene where she's like cozy in her house. And I don't. Can I show this picture? And so here she is with the box in her little home, and it says, "When the whirling, swirling snow dusted over the windows and silenced the forest outside, Camilla knew what she wanted to do. She arranged 3 boxes in front of the fire and opened her favorite collection." So that's setting the stage, and you've got the page turn here, like, what is her favorite collection, right? It makes you want to turn the page. And we can turn the page, and it's so many maps. Old ones on crisping paper with golden brown edges, glossy, vibrant new ones left behind by summertime hikers. She had mini maps and skinny maps, furled maps and folded maps. She even had maps of imaginary places, right? So, and then she gets into how she has like a really old map, and she wishes she could have been an explorer and like make some of the first paths. Right. But she says everything's already been explored, everything's already discovered. And then there's an epic snowstorm, and she finds out that she can
everything hasn't been discovered.
Right,
yes.
There's uncharted territory.
Right.
And so she gets to make her own paths and her own maps. And that kind of is a way. And and when I was younger, like in high school, I kind of had this notion that everything had already been discovered. Right. And I think nowadays we do a better job of telling kids and students, like, there are so many questions that we haven't answered, and so much you can explore. So this was kind of capturing that sense of like, oh, it's all been done, what can I do? But really, there's always more questions and always more things to.
No, and that's what a great motivator for students and young people who are not yet students. I'm always been curious about the relationship between the illustrations and the text in books for young readers like this. So do you have any input on what Laura is doing once you send the text off to the publisher?
So Imagination Press is very good about keeping the author in the loop. It varies publisher to publisher, and sometimes you hand it over and that's it. But with Imagination Press, especially with the maps, right? Because the maps, like I kind of know what I want to do with the maps, and I have a background in geography, and so with Laura Wood, she has been really good about taking my suggestions, like we need to simplify, or like this is something maybe too salient, or whatever. And
so she'll revise her drawing.
Yeah, but it's all through the editor.
Okay.
So so what happens is first there's initial black and white sketches, kind of like a storyboard.
Right.
And we all can, like the editor and the art director can give comments on that. I am allowed to give comments on that. And then Laura does another version. And then once the black and white is all good to go, then it's the color version, and that's kind of final, but there still can be some tweaks, just depending on what needs to.
And is she working on a computer, or is she actually drawing these?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think probably maybe a hybrid.
Yeah.
I know like when she makes corrections, it can be very quick. And so, but I don't know her process. I'm very impressed because yeah.
So we've got about 15 minutes left. I want to get to your poetry, and I want to talk a little bit about your adventures in screenwriting. But is there another book from the collection that you'd like to read?
I can talk about Lucy in the City.
Sure, yeah.
This was the very first book that I got published. And this is about a raccoon who is she's like the youngest in her family. She's oblivious of her surroundings when they go out foraging for food. But one night she gets left behind, and she needs to figure out how to get home. And what she does is she ends up using a retrace your steps strategy with the help of an owl. And so what I like about this is that it's about like tuning into your surroundings. And I think as kids, like we tote our kids along, they don't really have a say in where we're going, or they don't need to pay attention.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. And so the idea is that, you can kind of pay attention to where you are and where you're going, and start developing that mental map. And that's also a gentle introduction to maps. So what happens is that Lucy, she's like alone at the best garbage dump or the best garbage bins in town,
Right.
and she's sad. She's starting to cry. She's sniffing, and then she smells popcorn, and she thinks, if I can get back, like I smelled that along the way. If I can get back there, I'll be one step closer to home. But she doesn't know where to go. And so there's an owl, and she asks the owl to fly up high and see where there is popcorn nearby.
So she's using multiple senses to get around.
Yeah, and so the owl flies up, and we get this this like bird's eye view. It's like a literal bird's eye view, right? And so it's like a gentle introduction to a map where we can see the features, and then he gives her directions. And there's a compass rose, and kids love like following where Lucy goes and finding the different landmarks that she gets to get her way back home. So this is really popular with preschool kids because it's simple enough that it's really easy to understand. And the older kids, like there's math in it. It's always like the amount of blocks she goes is always 4, so it's either like 1 and 3 or 2 and 2. And so there's like little cues like that the older kids can pick up. And there's just really beautiful illustrations, like the nighttime sky, right? And it's
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So do you think that, like I've always loved maps, you always have loved maps, can kids become better at spatial learning? I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so.
and that's a great question because it wasn't always known whether our spatial abilities were sort of fixed at birth or based on early childhood experiences, or whether they. So we do know, based on research, that spatial skills can be improved with training, with practice at any time in our lives. And parents like to hear that because I meet a lot of parents who struggle with reading maps or, sense of direction or whatever, and they appreciate reading the books with their kids because they say it helps them.
They're boning up on their own skills. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a little transition and let's talk about your poetry, because you said you've always been writing poetry. 5 years ago, you got more serious about it, and you clearly have these skills in condensing things. You have a great ear, for sound. I heard some rhymes in the passage that you read earlier. Could you read us a few poems?
Yeah, and I have one from Scientific American.
Yes,
which
and I will grab this.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. This just came out, and I wrote a poem. I wrote this one about 5 or 6 years ago for a class through UCLA Extension online. They have a great writing program.
They do.
And so it was a class on poetic forms, which I love because I love the constraints of forms. And so anyway, the prompt was to write a sound poem. And I don't actually know where the germ of the idea came from, but I think it probably started with a phrase, and then I just kind of got into it and got going and had a lot of fun with it. And then I was, I want to get my poems out there. I want to publish, and I sent it to some literary magazines. But then I was thinking, it's about a rocket launch. And then I was like, what about a scientific magazine?
What about a place that loves rockets?
Yeah, and I looked up Scientific American, and lo and behold, they do poetry.
Right.
And this is the oldest running magazine in the U.S. And they started with a poetry column initially, and then it went away for many years, and then it came back more recently, which I'm very grateful for.
That's terrific, yeah. Let's hear it.
Yeah. And again, it's a sound poem, and you'll see why as I read it. All right, this is called Rocket Launch Laconic. Countdown metronomic, astronomic, diastolic, that's blood pressure. Mental state, cyclonic, praying atheist, ironic. Cacophony, chaotic, blast off, billowing, iconic. Lift off, spacecraft, aeronautic, rocket, supersonic. Clapping, histrionic, grinning, idiotic, hugging, kiss, platonic, gazing up, hypnotic. Orbit, episodic, flawless, avionic, systolic, now harmonic, and that's blood pressure again. Recapping, rhapsodic. Nighttime mind, spasmodic, therapeutic, tonic, crashed out, catatonic, dreaming, astronautic.
That's great. So as you were reading it, I was picturing all the movies and TV shows I've ever seen of a rocket launch and all the different parts of the people in the control room, the astronauts, but you managed to do it just using a handful of words and one rhyme, right?
Yeah. So I love that it tells the story, right? It's like counting down. It's like the anticipation of the rocket lifting off, and kind of like capturing the excitement, the nervousness, the tension, and then that iconic sort of billowing smoke of the rocket going up. And then everyone on the ground clapping, celebrating, and
platonic.
Yeah, hugging, kiss, and gazing up at it. And then a little bit about the rocket itself, right? The orbit, the avionics, everything's working. And then down on the ground, everyone kind of starts calming down and starts, talking about it, recapping everything. And then you get to the nighttime, and everything's sort of pinging around still. You're still very excited about the excitement of the day, and so therapeutic tonic can be anything you want it to be. And then crashed out, finally sleeping, and then dreaming about the astronauts.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, let's hear another poem in a different style from you.
Okay. Yeah. And so this is, I have a little packet here. I brought some poems from my novel in verse.
Okay.
So a work in progress is a novel in verse, and this is kind of related to the screenplays because I wrote the screenplay version of the story first, and then I'm adapting it into a novel in verse. And you might ask why.
Not exactly a big seller traditionally, right? The novel in verse, yeah.
Right, but I think because coming from picture books where I'm used to kind of writing very concise, and then from poetry, and so it's a challenge for sure to write a novel-length story in verse, and this is free verse. It's but just so very sparse and very getting to the emotion of it. So it's sort of a comfort zone for me, even though it is challenging. And I think this story lends itself to it because it's sort of like a character study almost. And
do we need to know the plot of the novel before you
so I can tell you it's about a woman. Part of it maybe I read and we kind of talk about it that might be a good way to do it. Because from this is the opening poem, and you'll kind of get a sense of the main character and sort of her situation. So it's called Weekday. So the whole work is called Restoring Nora Lee. Nora Lee being the main character.
Okay.
And this poem is called Weekday Morning Routine. Shoveling cereal into her mouth at intervals, Nora Lee assembly lines sandwiches, while Sammy, 8, and Dana, 10, crunch toast, slurp juice at the high counter. Mom, can you cut the crusts off? Husband Dover autopilots in to multitask coffee pouring, shirt buttoning, and phone scrolling. He laughs, and Nora Lee looks up, expectant, unnoticed. She turns to her kids. Fill your water bottles, go brush teeth, and oh, Dana, violin today. She funnels strawberry tops into the compost collector. Red juice stains her fingers, and she licks her thumb, doesn't notice the taste is sweet.
Ah, that's nice. So, family getting ready for the day, chaotic, but that's a really poetic little last touch.
Yeah, right. And so that I want to convey that she's kind of on autopilot. She's in this like mom mode, providing for everyone. Others' needs go first, and she's kind of like not connected with herself very much. Right. Yeah, and for various reasons that stem back, going back into her past.
And presumably we'll find out all that as the novel progresses. So I don't want you to give away too much or anything like that. Yeah.
And then so for this, should I read it?
Yeah, let's read one more.
For this one, so Nora Lee is a receptionist at Sunshore Senior Living, which is an independent living community. Okay. And the other people you need to know in this one, Carol is the center director, and Mr. McGregor is a resident in this community. Okay, and this one is called, and this is from a little, I think it's still in the first chapter, but it's a little bit more in, Emotionally Blindsided at the Tuesday Staff Meeting.
Great title.
Staff meetings are quick and efficient, generally invoking a sense of camaraderie, competency, and confidence. This week, 2 new things. A trial meditation program, staff welcome to attend, to evaluate, and, Carol smiles big for the last topic, a senior art program with the nonprofit gallery run by Mr. McGregor's niece, culminating in a show at her gallery. In a blink of adrenaline, Nora Lee flashes back to 7 years old, to shiny parquet, paintings haloed with spotlights on wall after pristine wall of a house only for paintings, not even any furniture. Her mom had taken her. She remembers large canvases, vivid with impossible colors for skies, for hillsides, for faces that were still somehow so lifelike. Up-close details like secrets, a tiny ridge of paint that escaped any smoothing brush, the captivating space where colors meet, blend, and overlap, a dance. That was the day when, back at home, Nora Lee swirled green and blue onto fresh paper, felt a shiver down her arms, and decided she would become a painter, a professional artist. And for a time, the world, her heart, expanded with that certainty.
But she has given it up, apparently, yes.
Yes.
Well, we just have about 3 minutes left, so let's transition. You were talking about how this was connected to a screenplay, and I think you have some good news that you can announce.
I do, yes. So I've been writing screenplays for about 5 years now, and I submitted to the Ojai Film Festival screenplay competition, and I won. And thank you. I'm thrilled, over the moon. The prize is a full table read of this script. It's a feature screenplay. It's an adaptation of local author Gwen Dandridge's young adult novel, The Dragon's Chosen. And so actors will bring it to life at this table read, and I can't wait. And that's just the dream, right? Is to hear your words embodied, brought to life. So I'm really thrilled about that.
Right. So is it connected? I mean, it's not connected to what we just...
Right, different screenplay.
But talk a little bit about the through line between these 3 genres here, you know, between children's books, poetry, and
yeah, because at first they seem a little bit like, you know, all over the place. And I thought that too until I started thinking about it. And well, picture books are words and pictures, and movies are words in motion, like moving pictures, right? Motion pictures. So it all kind of makes sense. And it's what I want to do with screenwriting is tell stories about women, kind of move away from the children's audience, expand into more of a like adult audience, and tell stories with pictures that move. So it's sort of an evolution and expansion. And it's exciting to have these new challenges, right? New learning curves with new media, and yeah.
Well, we just have about a minute and a half left, and you were earlier talking about very clearly about how you sort of got into the world of picture books. But what piece of advice or pieces of advice that you could talk about in 60 seconds would you convey to our audience who want to write just like you wanted to do? What are a couple things that you would say to folks?
Just go for it. And for me, taking classes is essential because it gives me structure, it gives me deadlines, it gives me feedback from an instructor. So I always turn to courses, and there's so many courses online, or like City College actually took the screenwriting series at City College here in Santa Barbara. Lots of resources out there, and then just do it and enjoy the process. That's my writing motto that I adopted a few years ago. Just like a lot of times we fixate on the outcome and like having something published or whatever, but the process itself is fun and it's enjoyable. And even when it's hard and challenging, you can still find a way to enjoy it, and that makes it all worthwhile.
So it doesn't really matter
because
what the end product is because you've enjoyed it all.
Yeah, and it makes you want to sit down in your chair and and keep at it. But tenacity and just find out like what it is inside that you need to express, and you can do that.
That's a beautiful way to end this interview. Thank you so much, Julie. I appreciate it.
Really had a great time being here.
I enjoyed talking with you. The Creative Community is a co-production of TVSB in Santa Barbara and CAPS Media in Ventura. I'm your host, David Starkey, and we'll see you next time.